As always with Coach Cal, Arkansas has a great collection of talent, but Andy Patton, now he's got to make the pieces actually fit.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Monday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We're your host. This is my guy, Andy Patton, looking fresh over there. I'm Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listener watch to get your week going the right way. Want to remind you, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Download it today and get going. Andy, we want to send a special shout out to all the everydayers. We want to say hi to all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord, and especially shouts to our guy Vapor, who's a big BYU fan that is sprucing the Discord up right now. If you're not part of it, gang, come on and join us in there. That link's in the show notes, free to join. Andy, a couple big things. Today is the first official day of practice. I know in this day and age, they've already been doing what the NCAA calls workouts, but today ain't going to look much different than those workouts, Andy, if we're being honest. Today also marks 6 weeks out to the day from the beginning of the regular season. Obviously, though, we're going to get some great exhibition action between now and then and some inner team things as well. Today, Andy, we have our 17th team preview. We've got a playlist of all of those, gang. We'll tag it up there. This week, we're doing Arkansas today. We will have Duke with Andy and JJ Jackson, the host of Locked On Blue Devils, tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, myself and Lance Daw will be doing Kentucky. So a great week of teams for that. Andy Patton, last year, very quickly, Arkansas 22-14, 8-10 in the SEC in Coach Cal's first year. As a reminder, started SEC play 0-5, a turning point when they won at Rupp, and that wow, still can't believe that happened. Yeah. Went 7-4 the rest of the way after that, tied for ninth. Lost in the second round of the SEC tournament to Ole Miss, ultimately beat Kansas and St. John's somehow with R.J. Lewis sitting on the bench, and then ultimately lost to Texas Tech in overtime in a game, quite frankly, they should have won. Adu Thero was the leading scorer. Janelle Davis didn't do what we expected him to do until Boogie Fland got hurt. And Andy, I think a lot of that is where that leads us to start. They couldn't quite figure out, like, John L. Davis, Boogie Fland, what do we do with all this? And it's the same for me this year, and a tale we see all the time with John Calipari. Who is this team's best player, and are they going to be able to figure that out and utilize that person and lean on him?
Yeah, it's such a common story with Coach Calipari teams that it is part of the many reasons that there was this just a massive amount of frustration by the Kentucky fan base by the time Coach Cal had departed, having Devin Booker come off the bench, for example. Like, there's just so many times, and even in one of his most recent seasons, was it Shepard or Dillingham? I think both those guys were not playing as many minutes.
Dillingham was coming off the bench.
Yeah, Dillingham was coming off the bench. And like, it's just something we've seen where his rosters tend to have a lot of guards and more guards typically than he's going to find room to play. And then there's always, not always concern necessarily in the front court, but not nearly as much depth in those specific spots. And this roster, I mean, it's just the same exact story. You have two great freshmen coming in, and we'll get more into the kind of specifics of the roster. But yeah, I think it's a lot of the same question of, like, what does Coach Calipari do with this group, and who is going to be that guy who steps up? I mean, last year's team, DJ Wagner was the only player who started every single game, and he wasn't their best player. He was probably their third best guard when Boogie Fland was healthy, and Wagner was fine. It's not like he was just super disappointing last year, but I wonder what we'll see this year. Do we see Wagner get a huge lion's share of the minutes in the backcourt? Does he play over the 2 5-star freshmen? What does that mean for the sophomores coming back in Richmond and Knox? Like, there's a lot of talent on this roster. Like you said at the very beginning of the show, Isaac, a lot of talent here, but I think there's a fairly limited way for this roster to fit together in a way that succeeds in the SEC and with their brutal non-conference slate. And frankly, I'm not sure I'm convinced that Coach Calipari is going to make those pieces fit in the way that they need to fit. And that is the difference between this team hitting their ceiling, which I think is very high, and potentially bottoming out in what could be another disappointing season. Even though they had that success in the tournament last year, I could see this season being a little bit of a roller coaster if Coach Cal spends a lot of time trying to figure out how these pieces fit.
Especially, and we'll get to this in the third segment, because the non-con is a good deal harder this year than it was last. But again, we'll get to that here in a little bit. Andy, another year, I remember this happening in a big way. And I was like, what are we doing? Was the 2014-15 season for Kentucky, when you had Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns on your team. Those dudes were 6th and 7th, Andy, in minutes per game. Booker literally never started for that team. And with all due respect to these boys coming from the same mother, like they were on the bench behind the Harrison twins. And it's like, what are we doing with that? And look, obviously that 2014-15 Kentucky team, Andy, was very good. And they lost one game, and that one game was in the Final Four. But guess what? It bit them when it was eventually going to buy. And I, to this day, I'm like, if you play the right guys on that team, they not only beat Wisconsin, but then beat Duke for the national championship in 2015. Cal has not proven throughout his despite having these high-level players. It's like, but buddy, you got to play the right guys the right amount of time. You got to figure out what that is. And here we are now. And I guess we call it the twilight of his career. I don't know how many years he's got left, but, and even last year, Andy, looking back at it, we noticed as we were prepping for this, I don't think I had processed this. Andy, 8 different players started at least 10 games for Arkansas last year, which that alone is bonkers. And only one player started all 36 games Arkansas played, and that was DJ Wagner. That was not Boogie Flan. That was not John L. Davis, DJ Wagner. And so as you look at this, you've got these returners and you've got these new guys, and pretty guard heavy, I don't mind saying. And that's part of it too, is it's like a lot of your best talent is all in the backcourt. And how does that all work out? Because I think you're going to get burned if you're trying to play 5 guards and wings.
Yeah, well, it's just Cal has not struggled to recruit high-level freshmen ever. This is one of the few areas that he has never once ever struggled. And what's always kind of fascinating to me is, like, we can go back a decade and look at a year where Coach Calipari didn't play freshmen who are now on track to be like Hall of Fame caliber NBA players in Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns, like you mentioned. It's like he was doing this a decade ago, where he wasn't playing these guys. He was doing this a few years ago with Rob Dillingham, like we talked about. Like, and there's, again, many other examples. And then last year, DJ Wagner, again, not trying to make this all about him, but he played over guards that maybe he shouldn't have played over. And again, Fland obviously started when he was healthy. And then when he got hurt, that team got better, not because Boogie is bad, but because they had too many players who were similar in their player archetype, who needed the ball in their hands to be successful. When you had 3 of those guys playing, it just did not work. When you had 2 of them playing, it worked better. And we saw that as the season went on, as Fland goes down and Davis and Wagner kind of improved their play style. But are we going to see that again this year? Like, I think Darius Acuff is going to start, but could that mean that some of the other freshmen or the other young players on this team are not getting the playing time that they deserve? What's going to happen to Malik Thomas, a top 15 prospect in this class? Is he going to play? Is DJ Wagner going to play over him? Are we going to look back 5 years from now when Malik Thomas is an incredibly good NBA player and DJ Wagner is not? Are we going to look back and think about this being the same kind of situation? I think it's very possible. And it's when you can predict how a coach is going to handle his roster, and you can predict that it's maybe not going to be the way that is going to be as conducive to wins. If we can do that, and obviously we don't know if we're going to be right, but the other teams in the SEC know what's going to happen here. And that is part of the problem for Cal too, is he's become predictable. It's become a little bit easy to kind of know what the roster construction is going to look like, where the talent's going to be concentrated, and what he's going to try to do. And again, he can have a roster that's maybe a top 3 or 4 most talented in the SEC, but that doesn't mean he's going to finish in the top 3 or 4 of the SEC. That happened at Kentucky, and there's a reason to believe that could happen again here in his second season at Arkansas.
Andy, here's a nice little stat to help us frame this a little more. Of the rotation players, where do you think John L. Davis finished in usage percentage?
It should have been no lower than probably second. Certainly should have been lower than third. Probably should have been second. Where was it?
He was fourth. Adu Thero, Boogie Fland, Zvonimir Ivicic, and then John L. Davis.
Yeah.
Like that's just, that alone tells me they didn't know what they had. And like, why are you going to bring in John L. Davis and not let him just absolutely cook, if I can put it that way? And so we'll see what happens with all that this year.
Yeah, and again, Antonio Reeves was like very good at Kentucky in that role, so it kind of felt like, well, he's going to do the same thing with John L. Davis, and it just didn't come together that way for Coach Cal and the Hogs. But Isaac, this team does have 4 key returners. We've talked about a few of them already, but they also have, of course, as we're used to seeing with Coach Cal's team, a usual mix of 5-star freshmen coming in. And now we're going to get more into the details of how are these pieces truly going to fit together for this team? What is the best case scenario for how this roster construction goes for the Hogs? We're going to get into that here in just a second. But first, folks, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. One of the great things about FanDuel is it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to bring some energy into your Sundays. Well, folks, we're talking Arkansas hoops today. They are at plus 2,500 to win the championship in 2026. If you think Cal's getting back to the big dance, back to the natty, those are your odds over at FanDuel. And if you're ready to play, you can download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. All right, folks, segment 2 here, continuing our conversation, talking about the Arkansas Razorbacks, Coach Calipari's team entering his second season in Fayetteville with the team.
This is the second ever season of college basketball for the Arkansas Razorbacks, Andy.
This is their second season ever for the
They hit reset. Nolan Richardson is gone. It's not no 94 championship. It's out.
Oh, man, fans are going to be very surprised to learn that about this program. Isaac, one of the things that I think Coach Cal was able to do somewhat successfully this last year is get some key pieces back. Obviously, Boogie Fland was a tremendous loss in the transfer portal for this team. But really, and then Zvonimir Ivicic, obviously 2 big losses, but to be able to return not only Trevon Brazile, who's a veteran guy who came back last year when a lot of people didn't think that he would because he's playing for a new coach, and then to get back the 2 rising sophomores in Karter Knox and Billy Richmond, and of course DJ Wagner. Like, those are 4 really key players who are all going to play very big roles for this team. And I think in an era where even the best teams in college basketball, even the best teams in the SEC, are frequently turning over huge amounts of their roster year in and year out, I think it's notable to talk about Cal and the incoming freshmen, and we'll talk about the transfer portal class. But I think a big part of why this team could be successful this upcoming season is the fact that they have 4 significant contributors who were all in this system on this team last year for Coach Cal.
Yeah, man, Andy, that's such a big win, and it's like, yeah, you lose a lot, right? Like Boogie Fland is at a competitor now. Obviously, Janelle Davis is totally gone, but I mean, I feel like, DJ Wagner had his troubles his first year at Kentucky with shooting and other stuff. I feel like he's really starting to come on. I really think, because not only did he play for Cal last year, he's been with them, the whole time.
Yeah.
And I feel like Richmond and/or Knox are really got big potential here. Obviously, with Brazile, he predates Cal at Arkansas. Remember, 2-3 years ago now, had that great start to the season. I think it was game 9, maybe game 10. He got hurt, and it was like, man, he was looking good. And so, gosh, if he can really fully get back to that. And I think last year that was part of the struggle too. Is it him? Is it Jonas Adu? Is he's getting back from injury? What Big Z? Like, what do we have in the front court? And I think Brazile could be a dude there. And so there's just, man, to help set that culture for these dudes coming in is important. It's just, again, can we set that culture? Will you allow us to? Will you follow what's happening?
Yeah. And you mentioned the front court and where Brazil is going to fit into that. Well, the front court is going to be pretty new look for Coach Calipari, because you mentioned Adu. Obviously, he's out the door with eligibility. Big Z out the door over to Illinois. So it's going to be a new look front court. You got Brazil coming back, but you also got in 2 transfers. And this is kind of the only spot, not kind of, this was the only spot where Arkansas made additions in the transfer portal. They didn't use it very much. They had 4 returners. They had 4 freshmen coming in, some international guys who are, I suppose, freshmen as well. But for the most part, the transfer portal is where they're replenishing in the front court. They did that with Adu last year. This year, they got Malique Ewin coming in from Florida State. Very productive player last year. Offensively, very, very efficient score. I think it was like 60% from the field on the year. A good score. Not a great rim protector, but a good, solid big man in the ACC. And then you get Nick Pringle, who's just trying to see how many different programs in the SEC he can play for over the course of his career. He actually started at Wofford, which, believe it or not, is not an SEC team. But then he played at Alabama. Then he played at South Carolina last year, where he averaged about 10.6 boards. Now he's coming over to Arkansas. So your front court is, and we'll get into the freshmen. Obviously, we talked about Acuff and Thomas. They also have Isaiah Sealy, who's just outside the top 100, but a very talented wing. And then Amiri Brown, a small guard who's got some talent as well. But to me, the biggest question about this team, outside of the Coach Calipari of it all, which is a huge part of it, is this front court. Is it deep enough? Is it good enough? Is the fact that there's no real continuity in the front court? These guys haven't played together. Like, that concerns me a lot. And it concerned me about this team last year. And it wasn't, Adu was fine when he was healthy, but he didn't really find that role. And Cal hasn't really had a dominant big man that can really impact the game on both ends of the floor since Sheboy. And we said Aaron Bradshaw never lived up to his expectation, or hasn't yet. Maybe he will this year at Memphis, but they've had some talented bigs, but we haven't really seen the pieces come together. Ivisic showed flashes, but never consistency. I don't know that I think Malique Ewin and Nick Pringle are going to come in and be immediately impactful at the level they need to be for this team to compete for a top 5 spot in the SEC.
Yeah, because they're obviously both guys with some talent.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call them game changers.
Yeah.
I know we'll get to starters in a minute, but Andy, I wonder if I don't think this is your like most minutes played lineup, but I wonder if there's a world where you say, does it work to put Brazile at the 5 and just roll with 4 of the other guards and wings and whatever that looks like, at least for a change of pace sometimes. But yeah, I mean, look, Florida State, unfortunately, under Leonard Hamilton wasn't as good down the stretch as they had been in his last couple of years, but Ewan was a bright spot for that team last year. Maybe, getting to a team with more talent, things work well. Nick Pringle, obviously, as you said, been around the block. Wofford, shouts to Fletcher McGee. Haven't thought of his name in a minute. It's just like he is a very serviceable SEC big, and so it's not like he's going to hurt them. It's just, can any of the front court dudes rise to the level? Can either of these massive international kids just step up and rise to the level of what we expect from the backcourt and wings? But again, because you can't play all those back guards and wings, you can't play 5 of them. So how does that mix work together? It's just so interesting to see how this is going to come together.
Yeah, I think let's get into that a little bit more so here. We mentioned the international guys, Elmi Zavic from Bosnia, 7 foot, 285 pounds, who's got a couple of professional seasons under his belt. So that is an absolute monster of a man coming to Fayetteville. He is huge. If Coach Cal can get him to be that kind of serviceable fourth big, I think that really helps this team a lot. You got a couple other international guys coming in as well, Paulo Samido and Karim. I think it's I'm retail
because I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. I know it's a unique name for him. He's Lebanese. Samido is from Angola, technically comes from Orlando, but he's 7-footer for Samido, retails 6'7". So you got some size coming into the international ranks, but ultimately I'm with you. Do you play 4 guards? How do you play the front court? Because if you play in Brazil and Ewin together. I mean, that's 6'10" and 7 feet. Like there's some size there.
That'd work.
But I am curious if there's enough depth in that front court. I'll give you my projected starting five. I think you're for sure starting Darius Acuff. He's one of the best freshmen in college basketball this year. Kind of gets pushed aside a little bit by the conversation around the big three, as well as Nate Ament and Mikael Brown and Caleb Wilson and a few others. But Darius Acuff is tremendously talented. I think he's the only freshman who starts, though. Wagner's going to, I mean, again, he started all 36 games last year. There's no reason to think he's not going to start again. I think Karter Knox steps into a starting role as a sophomore.
Is Karter Knox a narc on, dude?
I don't know anything about Karter Knox. I don't know if that's his personality, but I think he's going to step into the starting role as a three. I know he started some games last year. He was very, very productive in the minutes that he played, like extremely efficient. And then I think Brazile and Ewin is your starting 4 and 5. And yeah, I think that's the starting lineup, but I think you see a lot of Nick Pringle. I think you see a lot of Malik Thomas coming off the bench. Like I think that there's a ton of talent on this roster, but still not sure how all the pieces are going to fit.
Well, and Andy, here's what's interesting about it. Because for me, I have the same starting five. I think it is between Ewin and Pringle. But whichever one doesn't, obviously he's probably first guy off the bench or first big off the bench. One of the issues for me is where's the shooting going to come from, right? Yeah. You don't know what you're going to get with Acuff. He's a freshman. It could go phenomenally or it could tank. And then Wagner, who has gotten better, but shot 30% last year. Yeah. Karter Knox, he shot 35%, but he's taken under 3 a game. Brazile will put him up sometimes, and he hit 36%, but he took fewer than 2 a game. So the guys that shoot a higher volume aren't hitting them at a high clip, and the guys that hit them at the higher clip aren't shooting a high enough volume for it to really matter that much. So the spacing and all of that is part of this too. Where is the outside attack going to come from? Both the volume and the higher percentage shooters. So that's, I think, something we got to keep an eye on with that proposed starting lineup as well, which again, I think it is the starting lineup, but man, somebody's going to have to hit.
I think that's to me what makes Karter Knox such the biggest X factor, biggest potential breakout candidate for this team, because I think you need him to be that guy. Again, as you mentioned, he shot less than 3-point attempts per game in 24 minutes. So it's not like his role was super diminished. Like he played a decent amount and just didn't shoot all that much, but he was 56% from 2. He was 35% from 3. Like he was incredibly efficient when he was on the floor. And I think now that Fierro's out the door, I mean, I think that's who was sucking up so much the role that he could have potentially filled. Knox is a better player than Billy Richmond. I think Billy Richmond's also going to take a step forward, but I think Knox is, if Knox becomes the guy,
not a 3-point shooter either.
No, Richmond shot 12% from 3 last year. Like he on an incredibly low volume. He's not a floor spacer at all. So you need Karter Knox to be that guy, or do you need both of the freshmen to be lights out 3-point shooters as true freshmen in the SEC? That is a really, really hard ask. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, but it is a tough ask. And I think you kind of need all of that to happen. Like if Knox becomes a great scorer and a great shooter, but the freshmen don't shoot, I still don't think you have enough. So that's a huge question.
Let me also say quickly as you're going, neither Ewin nor Pringle, they literally don't shoot threes. Keep going.
Yeah, they don't space the floor at all. I mean, there's it's not in the front court outside of Brazile, and again on a small volume. I don't see it here. I don't see enough 3-point shooting, which puts a ton of pressure on the guards to be able to create for themselves and get downhill and score, around the rim. I mean, and if your bigs can't go step out of the 3-point line and pull the defenders away, you're basically asking Darius Acuff and DJ Wagner to score over SEC bigs routinely. That seems like a really tough recipe for success in this era, in this conference. And so I see a lot of potential concerns about how that's all going to work for this team.
And Andy, they're not going to have a ton of space to figure it out in non-con, because Coach Cal has a much, much tougher non-con schedule in his second year in Fayetteville. It's going to help prepare them, but are they going to be pretty dinged up schedule-wise coming into the SEC play? We'll look at that and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Square, you need to know that your favorite neighborhood spots Run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order and your name by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. Man, these are the places that bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. What does that look like? Well, spending money there at those local businesses doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community around it. Those local spots are what make the neighborhood feel like home, and so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses all around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more, but before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You're going to be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Andy, we move now to looking at the schedule. We'll start with the non-con, where, as a reminder, the SEC has 18 games. Unlike the ACC and Big 12, they didn't take their shot with 20 and come back down. They've been steadfast, the SEC has, all along. So anyway, 13 non-con games. Andy, we've mentioned it before. Obviously, Arkansas are going to be playing at Memphis. Cal's return back to FedEx Forum. Great stuff. Excited about that. That's Monday, October 27th. A really, really neat deal there. Props to Penny and crew for making that happen as well. They also have exhibitions against Cincinnati, and they will have the Razorback tip-off scrimmage, Andy, on Sunday, October 12th. That's so what, like a fortnight from now? That's Wimbledon away is what we're talking about. Okay, there are 5 with apologies to the 8 bye games. There are 5 games that matter in non-con, Andy. That's Saturday, November 8th, true road game at Michigan State. Thursday, November 27th, that's Thanksgiving Day against Duke in the United Center in Chicago. That'll be the CBS Thanksgiving Classic. Again, we love that this is happening. These high marquee college basketball games following the NFL Thanksgiving Day games. Their next game, Wednesday, December 3rd against Louisville, hosting Louisville in the ACC SEC Challenge. Oh, you know things are going to be rocking in Fayetteville that night. Saturday, December 13th, playing against Texas Tech in Dallas at the American Airlines Center. That's the Revo-Crute rematch. I don't know what Revo-Crute is, but I love getting a rematch of that game from the NCAA tournament last year. And Andy, the last game of note is the next Saturday, December 20th. We love our December Saturdays, baby, against Houston in Newark at the Prudential Center. So, Andy, that's insane. In addition to playing at Memphis and hosting Cincinnati in exhibition play, they are at Michigan State, Duke on a neutral, Louisville at home, Texas Tech on a neutral, Houston on a neutral. I mean, that's all 5 top 25 teams, and 4 of them maybe top 10-ish teams, Andy?
Yeah. And this is a ridiculously tough schedule for Coach Cal and Arkansas. I love it. I love seeing this. Again, we said, with apologies to the bye games, they do have James Madison on Monday the 29th. They also have Fresno State, future Pac-12 team, on December 6th, that game in Little Rock. So some teams that might be, I'm not expecting Fresno State to be all that good personally, but they're a higher resource school than some of the others on this list. Samford, the former Bucky McMillan's also on the schedule here. I love this. I love this schedule from Coach Cal. I love that he is, doubling down on playing those standalone Thanksgiving games. I think that's awesome. I think this is that served them really well last year when they played Illinois. I think them against Duke is going to be incredible. This is a phenomenal 5-game schedule here. And like you said, it gives them, they play a couple exhibitions and then they play Southern, and then they're straight into a road game against Michigan State in their second real game of the season. Like that, you got to figure it out very early who your guys are, who you're relying on. And I think that this is setting this team up more successfully than last year's schedule, where they were very successful in the non-con. The teams that they played that they thought were going to be good didn't end up being as good. And obviously that in theory could happen for this year's team, but I feel like they're pretty safe with Tom Izzo's team, with Duke, with Louisville under Coach Kelsey, and then Texas Tech and Houston in the Big 12. Like the odds of all 5 of those teams, or even 2 of those teams, not being, top 15, top 20 teams, is astronomically low. So whether they win any of those games remains to be seen for Arkansas, but they will be more prepared for the SEC than they would have been otherwise because of this schedule. And I commend Coach Cal for doing it.
Yeah, last year, to Andy's point, they went 11-2 in non-con play, but literally the only high majors they played were Baylor, who, as Andy said, was alluding
Mhm,
to, didn't live up to expectations, Illinois,
mhm.
who was strong, Miami, who, wow, and
Yeah.
Michigan, who like came on late but
Mhm,
had some issues as well. And so, Andy, I would rather, if I'm Cal, I'd rather be 9-4, 8-5 with this
mhm,
schedule than 11
mhm.
and 2 with that one because of what it's going to do to prepare you for SEC play. With
Yeah.
having 13 non-con games, yes, you play these 5 crazy games, but you got 8 others with which to really figure out who you are and try some stuff. So it makes
Mhm,
a ton of sense to me analytically, computer, net wise. All those games are going to help out as well. And so even if you lose a couple more from an analytics standpoint, which thankfully now the selection committee is really using, they
mhm.
should be in good shape heading into SEC play, which Andy starts on Saturday, January 3rd at home against the Vols.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible conference slate for them. Only one matchup with Kentucky. We know we want to see more of those. They're playing Kentucky on January 31st. So mark your calendars for that one. Coach Calipari taking on his old team. It will be in Fayetteville, though. So no return to Rupp for Coach Cal this year. We'll settle for the return to Memphis. I guess that's good enough for us to tide us over
One a
until next
year.
year. But yeah, so for me, I think I look at this team. I see a team that's going to be kind of just outside that top tier in the SEC. I think that the way we tiered it out, at least, we had Kentucky and Florida sort of ahead of everybody else, and then there's kind of another group that where Tennessee is going to be in that mix. I think Alabama is going to be in that mix. A lot of folks are a little lower on Auburn, but I have them slightly ahead. So for me, I think Arkansas is like sixth in the SEC. I think talent wise, roster wise, they're probably right around there, maybe fourth or fifth. But with some concerns about the front court, I think they'll finish around sixth in the conference. I actually have them. We mentioned those tough games in the non-con. I actually have them going 8-5. Like you said, I have them losing all of those games. I think the most likely W out of that group is against Louisville because it is at home for Coach Cal. It is off of a 6-day gap before that game, and I think that Louisville's front court is a big question, and that's one area where I don't think that Arkansas's lack of front court depth will be as problematic, whereas I think it'll become a bigger issue in those other games. So I have them 8-5. I have them 11-7, which should get them in that top 6, 7, 8 range in the SEC. That would put them 19-12, which is actually the exact same record that they had last year, albeit last year with a weaker non-conference schedule and more losses in conference play.
Right. A great reminder that not every record or resume is built the same. This a 19-12 against this, obviously, depending on who the wins and losses are against, reflects much more capably
Mm-hmm.
than does last year's 19-12.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, I'm right in that same vein with you. I had them fifth ahead
Mm-hmm.
of either Auburn or Alabama, right? But I do
Mm-hmm.
think definitely behind Florida, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then, again, it's the portal era, it's the SEC, it's all this talent. There are any number of teams, Texas A&M, Vandy, that could jump up and be in that second tier as well and bump Arkansas down if they can't get the pieces together. I'm very close to you record wise. I'm going to say they are going to win that Louisville game, so go 9-4. Of course, they could get picked off in any of those bye games as
Mm-hmm.
well. 10-8. I'm one game worse than you in SEC play, but meaning we have the same regular season record of 19-12 heading to the SEC tournament. Andy, you prepared a floor and ceiling for Arkansas. Why don't you hit us with what that gap is?
Yeah, I think for the ceiling for this team is the top 3 finish in the SEC. I think it's being along with Kentucky and Florida. I think it would be tough to beat either of those teams, but being a clear third right behind them would be a phenomenal result for this team. That would get them a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, almost certainly. And then I think the ceiling from there is you have a 3 seed or a maybe even a 2 seed, and you make it all the way to the Elite 8 Final Four. Like that's the ceiling for this team is Coach Cal getting back to the Final Four, putting this team in a position to potentially win a national championship. The way that happens, the freshman guards are exceptional. That's the main way that this happens is that Acuff and Thomas are awesome. They space the floor really well. You see Wagner find his groove in a major way in his 3rd year under Coach Cal. And then one of Richmond or Knox breaks out. Really, it's probably both to some capacity. And then that front court just needs to do enough. They need to do enough defensively in particular to keep this team afloat. If that all happens, that's the ceiling for this team. The floor is much lower than that for this team. It's outside the top 8 in the SEC. It's finishing 9th, 10th, 11th in the conference. It's being a bubble team, which is kind of what they were for a lot of last year until they kind of found their spot towards the end of the season. And then it's a first round loss. Like it's maybe a 9 seed and you lose to an 8 seed, or it's a 10 seed like last year, but you lose that first game. I do think there is a reality where Arkansas misses the tournament. I didn't feel like that's a super realistic floor, like that's below even where you'd think that floor would be, but I do think it's possible. It probably would require like injuries or something of that nature, but I think that the spread between the top end for Arkansas and the bottom end is pretty wide, and it's not because of talent. It's really just how, as we've said time and time again on the show, it's how Coach Calipari opts to utilize this talent on this roster and kind of how the pieces fit together for him in Fayetteville.
Andy, yeah, I think that's all correct. The talent is there. They just got to get it going. And so I would tend to agree with both your ceiling and your floor. All of those are realistic, making them probably one of the biggest gaps in floor and ceiling in the nation. I know we said that about North Carolina last week, pending how all the pieces fit. I think it's very similarly true about Arkansas. NCAA tournament projections, Andy. I put Arkansas as a 5 seed, and I think a lot of that is because of strength of schedule, both non-con and conference, I think would be honored and recognized. And I'm going to say they get it. It's one of those Cal teams that gets it figured out late. So they make the Sweet 16 similar to this year and fall in that same round again, but making it to the second weekend. And that's never something to be disappointed in.
Yeah, I have them, again, obviously same record. I think it's a little bit lower. I have them more like a 7 seed, maybe a 6 seed. I was kind of 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. I think if they go 19 and 12, they shouldn't get an 8, 9 seed. They should be off that line at least. So I'd say more like 6, 7. And again, last year they were a 10 seed with that same record, but they went 8 and 10 in the SEC. If I'm projecting them to go 11 and 7 in what I think is going to be a very strong conference, then yeah, they should probably be a single digit seed. And I have them not quite making it to the Sweet 16. I think this is around a 32 loss team. I'm concerned enough about the front court that I think a 7-seeded Arkansas team playing a 2 seed, whatever 2 seed they end up drawing, whether it's, a familiar team like Texas Tech or Houston or somebody like that. I just think the front courts are going to be too challenging for them to overcome in a 1-game matchup in the round of 32. I think that would be I know that would be a disappointing result for Arkansas and their fans, but that's kind of where I see this team kind of playing out this season. Isaac, that's going to wrap it up for us today we haven't done very many of these SEC team profiles yet, so very excited to get this one done. Of course, as we talked about earlier, you're going to talk with the great Lance Daw, the host of Locked On Kentucky, later this week, so we'll have that one as well. But so much fun to get a chance to talk about this team and see kind of how they're going to play out this year. That is going to wrap it up for us today. Again, we have a couple more team previews coming your way. Isaac and I will do a conference preview to close out the week, as we are now 6 weeks away from the start of the college basketball season. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the Mick Bruins. And until next time, peace out.